Hi, Mark here from newhometricks.com with a slightly different video today. Instead of looking at the next step in our smart home journey, instead today I'm going to give you my thoughts on an article that I read recently on smart home, and particular privacy and the smart home. This was the Gizmodo article that came out in February. It's since been picked up on a couple of times by other news sites. Most recently I saw that the BBC had picked up on this a week or so ago. This was the article that was done by Kashmir Hill, and I've put the link to this in the description below if you'd like to read it for yourself. There's also an accompanying video that they did. What they did was that they installed into Kashmir's apartment a whole load of different smart home products, and then they installed their own little router that they built to basically monitor all of the communications between those smart home products and the manufacturer's servers, so that they could see how many times these devices phoned home, how much information these devices were gathering about how they were being used, what you were doing with them, when you're using them, that kind of thing. And the point that the article makes is that it's gathering a huge amount of information about you, and this could be quite a big privacy concern. They also make the point in the article that many of these smart home products didn't necessarily work as well as they would have thought, and they came to the conclusion towards the end of the article that actually the smart home is more of an annoyance than it is useful. So I kind of wanted to give you my thoughts on this based on the experience that I've had with my own smart home. It's coming up to nearly a year now since we kind of started with this process. So whilst I may not have installed quite so many devices as they did in this particular experiment, I think I've got a reasonably good understanding of how some of these things work, albeit I haven't certainly looked at the amount of data that's been collected. They've certainly done a good job there. But first of all, just sort of explore the privacy issue. I mean, yes, it is obviously a big concern. These devices are gathering information about you, they're phoning home, they're checking for updates, they're probably providing information about how they're being used. Now, how big a privacy concern this is going to depend on your point of view. A lot of this is going to be a personal thing. Speaking for myself, am I hugely concerned if Philips know how I'm using Philips Hue, for example? Not necessarily. They're probably gathering a lot of that data so that they can understand how their products are used so that they can make them better. What I would be concerned about is if you had a load of smart home products in your house and that data was being shared or sold to a third party. So I think that we're all fairly aware these days of the fact that when you browse the web, for example, that you're visiting social networking sites, you're watching videos on YouTube, that a lot of the information about your browsing history, your habits, what you're doing is being tracked and is being accumulated by companies that are then able to use that information to target advertising at you, use it for various other purposes, but it could also be used in potentially negative and harmful ways. We've seen recently with this whole episode around Cambridge Analytica and Facebook that there can be some concerns about how this data is being used and who has access to it. And I think for many people, a big cause of alarm is not necessarily that the first party that they interact with has access to that data. They kind of expect the fact that they're using that service, that they're going to have the data. It's when that data is then shared or sold on to somebody else for their own purposes that I think a concern starts to be raised. If you're using Facebook, you expect Facebook to have the data. How many people knew that Cambridge Analytica had access to the data? So there are a whole range of different concerns that crop up here if that data is then sold off to a third party. I think that it's down to regulations and potentially laws to help us address this. Here in the EU, for example, I'm in the UK, the European Union is just about to start enforcing the new General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, and that's going to give citizens like me a lot more control over my personal data and how it's used. I'm going to have the right to, much stronger rights to see what data an organisation holds over me. I'm going to have much stronger consent rights. I'm going to have much stronger right to be forgotten rights available to me. So there's a whole load of changes that the GDPR brings in, but obviously there'll be other parts of the world that don't have these protections or don't have them quite yet. Obviously, I think a lot of changes will probably come through over the next few years, probably as a result of things like the Facebook case, for example. So we'll see how things change. But manufacturers can also do a lot here to help reassure us about our privacy and simply make clear and bold statements that they're not going to share our data, that they are going to allow us to have this consent. And I think it's really important that we gain that promise from these manufacturers that if we're going to allow them to have our data, that there's a certain amount of trust there that needs to be maintained. The second point that was made in the article was around whether or not these products are actually worth the trouble, that whether or not they work well, whether or not they're more annoying than useful. And there were a few things that I kind of picked up on here. Firstly, the general view that they don't integrate together very well, that it's difficult to get some of these products talking to each other in order to deliver the dream of the smart home, that everything kind of talks to each other and everything reacts together in the right way. So one example was the idea that they had a smart bed, or they had a smart sort of heated mattress topper, so that you could monitor your sleep habits and it would give you a sleep score each day and things like this. But the idea that could also be connected to their smart coffee machine, so that when the bed detects that you're getting out of bed, that it turns the coffee machine on and brews you your morning coffee. And getting some of that integration to work can be troublesome. Getting it to work even just with things like the Amazon Echo and getting Alexa to control your devices can sometimes be troublesome. They gave an example that in order to turn certain lights on and off, they had to go through a whole series of different commands that they had to issue to Alexa in order to get it to do something. So there are certainly some problems here that you can see, but for me, I think that there are plenty of areas where actually you want to be in a situation where you can minimize the amount of integration that you need to do. So far, a lot of the smart home products that I've been using just kind of work pretty well by themselves, and you don't need to do a lot of integration. Yeah, it's good to be able to control my lighting through Hue. Yes, it's good to be able to turn the temperature up or down through my Amazon Echo. So there's a lot of different areas here where some integration can bring a lot of benefits, but going to the extreme, I think, can probably cause some problems, because of course all of these different devices have been created by different manufacturers. You might have some middleman like Amazon Echo or maybe SmartThings or some other hub to try and control all of these things, and does all of that work all of the time? Well, no, because they're probably not tested to work together, so there can be some problems there. But for me, just having the right products that can, for the large part, work independently with just the bare minimum amount of integration is probably the best way to go. The second issue that I kind of picked up on in the article was this idea that some of these products kind of nag you a lot. So they gave the example of the robot vacuum cleaner that's constantly sending the messages to tell them when it gets stuck, when the collection bin is full, if something goes wrong with it. All of these kind of messages are coming through. They're getting these sleep scores from their mattress to tell them when they've had a bad night's sleep. It's like, I know I've had a bad night's sleep. I don't feel refreshed, that you know about these things. So too much information, basically, information overload. And yeah, I can again see how if you've got a lot of these kind of smart products in your home, that it's going to result in information overload. But that kind of brings me to the third point, which is overcomplication in your smart home. There are a lot of different manufacturers out there who are just kind of rushing to make their products smart, just so that they can say that they have a smart product and put the word smart in front of the name of the product or at the end of the product. Smart TV, smart coffee maker, smart everything. And a lot of the time there's not very much thought put into why, what's the benefit of making that product smart? I've personally kind of restricted myself to 4 key areas, things like smart lighting, smart heating, smart security, and smart entertainment. I'm not necessarily so interested in smart coffee. I'm not so interested in smart sleep. I don't see that there are a huge amount of benefits there. I see the benefits in the other areas, but I don't see the benefits in things like smart sleep or smart coffee. So there's only so many areas that I think smart technology can realistically be embedded into before you start to go off in the direction of making things smart just for the sake of it. And so I don't think that we necessarily need to go that far. I think a lot of manufacturers have put smart into their products just so that they can say that they've got it, because they think that it's a strong selling point, that people are going to see smart and think, I'm going to buy that because it's the smart product. But I don't necessarily believe that it's necessary in everything. I think it's probably inevitable. I think a lot of manufacturers will just carry on embedding smart technology into their products for the sake of being able to deliver some kind of benefit that they think that we need. And this will probably just happen whether we want it to or not in the long run. But nevertheless, in the meantime, my personal view would be to say choose the smart products that you want. In the experiment that Gizmodo have done here, they've kind of made everything smart. They didn't necessarily give a full inventory of all of the products that they put into the apartment, but they've obviously put in quite a lot into areas that I personally wouldn't have thought would be necessary. And I think if you just take away some of those components and just focus in on some specific areas where smart technology can really bring some benefits, and go with reputable manufacturers who want to have a good, trusted relationship with you so that you can be a bit more confident in the privacy side of things, then you're going to be in a much stronger footing, so that you're not going to be nagged. You're not going to have too much information coming through to you. You're not going to have an overcomplicated smart home. Focus on the areas that are important to you. If you don't need smart coffee, don't buy the coffee maker. You're probably going to save yourself some money with just going with a regular coffee maker. So these are the sort of things that I would say are important to focus on. Now, if you want to read the Gizmodo article for yourself, I've put the link in the description below. Also linked to in the description below is a companion blog post that I've written up to go with this video, or visit the website newhometricks.com. If you've liked this video, please share it. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.